If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Sharing it with your friends and family helps spread knowledge. And when we help others grow, we grow too. Thank you so much for listening. Let's dive into the podcast. The sudden explosion over Siberian wilderness. The morning of June 30th, 1908, began like any other in the vast Siberian wilderness. Local Evenki herders tended their reindeer near the Podkamenaya Tunguska River, unaware that their quiet world was about to change forever. At exactly 7:17 a.m., the sky exploded. Witnesses described a brilliant fireball racing across the heavens, brighter than the sun itself. The blazing object moved so fast that many thought lightning had struck on a clear day. Then came the sound, a thunderous roar that shook the earth and echoed for hundreds of miles. Sergei Semenov, a trader sitting on his porch 40 miles away, felt the heat hit his face like an open furnace. The blast threw him from his chair and knocked him unconscious. When he woke, his shirt was singed and windows throughout his village lay shattered. The shockwave traveled outward like an invisible monster. Trees that had stood for centuries crashed down in perfect lines, all pointing away from one central spot. Over 2,000 square kilometers of forest flattened in seconds. Yet something strange happened at ground zero. The trees directly below the blast remained standing, scorched black but upright like burnt matchsticks. Local Evenki people, terrified by what they witnessed, spoke of the sky splitting open. They saw their ancestral forest transformed into a graveyard of fallen giants. Some reported that the explosion knocked reindeer off their feet and sent them tumbling across the frozen ground. But the mystery had only begun. Scientists who heard reports of the blast expected to find a massive crater. Meteors that create such destruction always leave deep scars in the earth. Search parties prepared to discover twisted metal and space rock fragments scattered across the impact site. They found nothing. No crater existed where the explosion occurred. No meteorite pieces could be located despite careful searching. The blast had happened in the air, high above the treetops, leaving no physical evidence of what had caused it. Even more puzzling were the atmospheric effects that followed. For weeks after the explosion, strange lights danced across European and Asian skies. People in London could read newspapers outdoors at midnight without artificial light. The aurora borealis appeared in places where it had never been seen before. Seismograph stations around the world recorded the shock. The blast registered as a significant earthquake, though its source remained a complete mystery. Air pressure gauges showed the shockwave circled the entire planet twice. What force could create such massive destruction, yet leave no trace of itself behind? The Tunguska event had announced itself with incredible violence, then vanished without explanation, leaving only questions that would puzzle scientists for generations to come. The first scientific expeditions and the missing impact crater. Nearly 20 years had passed since that terrible morning in Siberia. The world had seen war, revolution, and chaos. But in the remote forests of Tunguska, something waited. Something that would puzzle science for generations to come. Leonid Kulik was not an ordinary man. This Russian scientist spent his days studying rocks that fell from space. When whispers of a massive explosion in Siberia reached his ears, he knew he had to see it for himself. But getting there would prove harder than anyone imagined. The journey to Tunguska was like traveling to the edge of the world. No roads led there. No maps showed the way. Local hunters spoke of a cursed place where the forest had died. They refused to guide visitors into that strange wilderness. Finally, In 1927, Kulik convinced a small group of brave hunters to lead him into the mystery. They packed supplies for weeks of travel through unmarked wilderness. What they expected to find was simple: a giant hole in the ground, chunks of space rock scattered everywhere, the clear signs of a meteorite strike. What they discovered instead changed everything. The first sign of strangeness came when they reached the outer edge of the damaged area. Trees lay on the ground like fallen soldiers, all pointing away from some central point. But as they moved deeper into this dead zone, the scene became even more puzzling. 8 kilometers of devastation stretched before them. At the very center, trees stood like ghostly monuments. Their branches were gone, their bark was burned black, but they remained upright, as if frozen in time. These skeleton trees created an eerie forest of the dead. Kulik searched everywhere for crater walls. He dug into the soft earth, looking for buried meteorite pieces. His team spread out across miles of broken landscape. They found nothing. No impact crater, no space rocks, no easy answers. The damage pattern told a story that made no sense. Something had exploded above the ground with incredible force. It had knocked down trees for miles in every direction. Yet at the center, where the blast should have been strongest, trees somehow remained standing. Local hunters watched the scientists with knowing looks. They had tried to warn them. This place held secrets that science might never explain. The more Kulik searched, the deeper the mystery became. His expedition had proven the explosion was real and massive, but what caused it remained hidden in the Siberian silence. Official scientific conclusions and energy estimates. Years passed. Teams of scientists returned to the Siberian wasteland with new tools and fresh eyes. They studied the patterns. They measured the damage. They searched for answers in the twisted metal of fallen trees. Something began to make sense. The explosion had come from above, not below. No crater existed because nothing had hit the ground. The mysterious visitor had destroyed itself in midair. Picture this: a chunk of rock or ice, perhaps 60 meters wide, racing toward Earth at incredible speed. The atmosphere fought back. Air pressure built up in front of the cosmic intruder. Heat grew beyond imagination. The visitor could not survive. At 5 miles above the forest, it surrendered. The explosion that followed released power equal to hundreds of atomic bombs. But unlike those terrible weapons, this blast left no radiation, only pure, devastating force. Scientists found tiny particles scattered across the region, microscopic remnants of something that had traveled millions of miles through space. These cosmic grains told a story of metal and rock that had once drifted in the cold darkness between planets. The tree damage revealed secrets too. Every fallen trunk pointed away from a single spot in the sky. The pattern matched what researchers expected from an air explosion. Computer models confirmed what the forest had recorded in wood and bark. Witnesses described a second sun blazing across the morning sky. They spoke of heat that burned their faces from hundreds of miles away. The sound arrived minutes later, a roar that shattered windows and knocked people to the ground. Nuclear tests in the 1940s showed similar effects. Desert plants flattened in perfect circles. Observers blinded by light brighter than the sun. The comparison was chilling. Nature had created something as powerful as humanity's most terrible invention. But questions remained. What exactly had visited Earth that June morning? An asteroid made of rock and metal. A comet filled with ice and dust. The visitor had vanished so completely that scientists could only guess. Some evidence pointed to a comet. These dirty snowballs from the outer solar system were fragile enough to explode high in the atmosphere. Others favored a small asteroid, torn apart by forces it could not resist. The mystery deepened with each study. Computer simulations showed multiple possibilities. Different materials would behave differently during their final, violent moments. The visitor had taken its secrets with it, leaving only destruction and wonder behind. Scientists had their best explanation, but the Tunguska forest kept its final secrets, whispering questions that even the most advanced theories could not fully answer. Persistent anomalies and unexplained effects, the trees told a different story than anyone expected. Scientists arrived decades later to find something odd in the wood itself. The rings inside the surviving trees showed strange patterns. Some years after 1908 showed growth that made no sense at all. These weren't normal tree rings. They were too thick in some places and too thin in others. The wood looked different too. Something had changed the way these trees grew, and it wasn't just the blast that knocked them down. But the trees were only the beginning of the puzzle. Local plants started growing in ways that seemed impossible. Berries grew larger than they should. Some flowers bloomed in colors that had never been seen before in that region. The local people whispered about these changes, but few outsiders believed their stories. Animals showed changes too. Hunters found deer with unusual markings on their fur. Some birds had feathers that shimmered differently in the sunlight. Fish in the nearby rivers grew to sizes that surprised even the oldest fishermen. Was something in the air? In the soil? No one can say for certain. Years passed, and stranger things began to surface. Lakes near the blast site held secrets in their muddy bottoms. When scientists finally tested the sediment layers, they found materials that shouldn't have been there. The layers from 1908 and the years after contained elements that puzzled the researchers. Something had settled into these quiet waters, and it wasn't from any earthly source they recognize. Perhaps most mysterious of all were the reports from around the world. For months after the Tunguska event, people across Europe and Asia saw strange lights in the night sky. The darkness never seemed complete anymore. Photographers in London could take pictures outdoors at midnight without using a flash. The sky glowed with a soft, unnatural light that lasted through the summer months. Letters poured into newspapers from confused citizens asking why the nights stayed so bright. Scientists measured the upper atmosphere and found particles that hadn't been there before. Something had been thrown so high into the sky that it traveled around the entire planet. But what was it exactly? Even today, when researchers return to the Tunguska site, they find readings on their instruments that don't match the surrounding areas. The forest has regrown, but something fundamental changed that morning in 1908. The land remembers what happened, even if we still don't fully understand it ourselves. Alternative theories and conspiracy speculations. The whispers began almost immediately after the Great Blast shook Siberia in 1908. As word of the explosion spread beyond the remote wilderness, curious minds started spinning tales that stretched far beyond fallen trees and mysterious lights. Some believed the Russian government had secretly tested a terrible new weapon in the empty forest. They pointed to the remote location and wondered if officials had chosen this spot deliberately. After all, who would notice an experiment in such a desolate place? These theories grew stronger during times of war, when people naturally feared hidden military projects. Others whispered about Nikola Tesla, the brilliant inventor, known for his strange electrical experiments. Could his wireless power transmission tests have gone horribly wrong? The timing seemed to match some of his most ambitious work. People imagined invisible beams of energy shooting across continents, accidentally striking the Siberian forest with devastating force. But perhaps the most captivating stories came from those who looked to the stars for answers. What if something from beyond our world had visited that morning? The idea of an alien spacecraft crashing or exploding above the trees captured imaginations worldwide. The lack of crater evidence only fueled these theories. Where else would a ship from another world leave such strange traces? These stories persisted because the official explanations felt incomplete. Scientists spoke of meteors and comets, yet no one could find the expected chunks of space rock. The pattern of destruction looked unlike anything people had seen before. Local witnesses described lights and sounds that seemed almost magical. The government's long silence on the matter made things worse. For decades, few researchers could even visit the remote site. This secrecy bred suspicion. If the explanation was simple, why all the mystery? Each theory found eager believers, especially during uncertain times when people questioned official stories. The Cold War years brought new fears of secret weapons. The space age sparked fresh interest in alien visitors. Every gap in scientific knowledge became a door for wilder possibilities. Yet when researchers finally gained full access to the site, they found no trace of artificial materials, no metal fragments from spacecraft, no residue from exotic weapons, no evidence of Tesla's electrical experiments reaching across the globe. The forest itself told a simpler story. Trees fell in patterns that matched natural explosions from above. The soil held no secrets beyond what falling space debris might leave. Still, the absence of a visible crater kept questions alive. These alternative theories reveal something profound about human nature. When faced with incomplete answers, we create our own explanations, often more thrilling than reality itself. The ongoing search and modern investigations. The forest keeps its secrets well, but science refuses to give up the chase. Modern satellites now peer down at the Tunguska wilderness from space. Their electronic eyes can see what early explorers missed. Strange patterns in the soil show up like ghost footprints from 1908. Scientists study these images on glowing computer screens, searching for clues hidden for over a century. New machines dig deep into the earth. They pull up cores of ancient mud and dirt, layer by layer. Each stripe tells a story. The scientists look for tiny particles that might have fallen from space that terrible morning. They test the soil with powerful chemicals, hunting for elements that don't belong on Earth. Teams still walk through those twisted trees, but now they carry equipment their ancestors could never imagine. Metal detectors sweep the ground. Special cameras capture light the human eye cannot see. Geiger counters click and buzz, measuring invisible radiation that might linger from the blast. The results surprise everyone. Some tests show traces of strange metals buried in the forest floor. Others find nothing at all. The mystery grows deeper instead of clearer. Underground rivers carry secrets in their water. Scientists sample these hidden streams, testing every drop. They find odd chemicals that whisper of cosmic visitors. But the evidence stays frustratingly incomplete. Lake beds hold memories too. Researchers drill through layers of mud that settled year after year. They can read the forest's history like pages in a book. The explosion shows up as a dark line in the sediment. Above and below, the story changes dramatically. Modern computers create models of what might have happened. They test thousands of possibilities. Asteroid? Comet? Something else entirely? Each simulation gives different answers. The machines cannot agree. Space agencies now watch the skies with new urgency. Tunguska taught the world that danger can fall from above without warning. Telescopes scan for threatening rocks hurtling through darkness. Scientists calculate paths and measure sizes. They prepare for the next cosmic visitor. But the original mystery refuses to solve itself. After decades of advanced research, fundamental questions remain unanswered. What exactly exploded over Siberia? Where are the fragments? Why do some measurements contradict others? The forest has healed its wounds, but the puzzle endures. Each new expedition brings better tools and deeper knowledge. Yet Tunguska continues to guard its secrets. challenging every generation of investigators who dare to seek the truth hidden in those haunted woods. Perhaps some mysteries are meant to stay mysterious, reminding us how much we still don't know about our dangerous, wonderful universe.